Vulnerability. It's a word that makes some of us squirm. We associate it with weakness, with exposure, with the risk of getting hurt. But what if I told you that vulnerability is actually our greatest source of strength? What if embracing our vulnerability could unlock a life of deeper connections, greater courage, and profound joy? Vulnerability is not about weakness. It's about courage. It's about showing up authentically, even when we're afraid. It's about letting go of the need to be perfect and allowing ourselves to be seen for who we truly are. When we allow ourselves to be vulnerable, we open ourselves up to the possibility of deep connection and intimacy. We create space for empathy and understanding. We give others permission to do the same. In a world that often feels isolating and disconnected, vulnerability is the bridge that brings us together. It's the key to unlocking our shared humanity and building meaningful relationships. Why do we fear vulnerability so much? From a young age, many of us are taught to suppress our emotions, to toughen up, and to avoid showing weakness at all costs. We learn that being vulnerable is risky, that it makes us targets for hurt and rejection. This fear of vulnerability is often rooted in shame. Shame tells us that we are not enough, that we are unworthy of love and belonging. It thrives in secrecy and silence, whispering lies that keep us small and disconnected. The truth is, vulnerability is not a sign of weakness. It's a sign of courage. It takes immense strength to step outside of our comfort zones, to let down our guard, and to allow ourselves to be seen. When we embrace vulnerability, we challenge the voice of shame and step into our authentic selves. We choose courage over comfort, connection over isolation, and wholehearted living over perfection. Vulnerability is the foundation of any truly meaningful relationship. It's the glue that holds us together through thick and thin, the bridge that allows us to connect on a deeper level. When we allow ourselves to be vulnerable with our loved ones, we create a space for trust and intimacy to flourish. We share our fears and insecurities, our hopes and dreams. We let them see the real us, flaws and all. This kind of vulnerability can be scary, but it's also incredibly powerful. When we feel seen and accepted for who we are, our relationships deepen and grow stronger. Of course, vulnerability is a two-way street. It requires both parties to be willing to open up and share their authentic selves. But when both people are willing to be vulnerable, the rewards are immeasurable. Our brains are wired to protect us from harm. When we perceive a threat, our nervous system kicks into gear, triggering a cascade of physiological and emotional responses designed to keep us safe. This is known as the fight or flight response. Vulnerability triggers this same threat response in our brains. When we put ourselves out there, when we risk rejection or judgment, our brains interpret this as a potential threat to our well-being. This is why vulnerability can feel so scary. Our bodies are literally reacting as if we are in danger. But here's the important thing to remember. Just because our brains perceive something as a threat doesn't mean it actually is one. In fact, vulnerability is essential for our well-being. It's the key to connection, intimacy, and joy. So how do we overcome our fear and embrace vulnerability? Section 5. Vulnerability and leadership, daring to be authentic. In a world that often equates leadership with strength and stoicism, vulnerability can feel like a liability. We're taught that leaders need to be tough, decisive, and always in control. But the truth is, vulnerability is an essential quality of effective leadership. When leaders allow themselves to be vulnerable, they create a culture of trust and authenticity. They give their team members permission to show up as their full selves, to take risks, and to learn from their mistakes. Vulnerable leaders are not afraid to admit when they don't have all the answers. They're willing to ask for help, to listen to different perspectives, and to learn from their experiences. This kind of vulnerability fosters collaboration, innovation, and creativity. It creates a workplace where everyone feels valued and respected, where people are empowered to do their best work. Section 6. The vulnerability paradox, strength and openness. The vulnerability paradox is simple. When we allow ourselves to be vulnerable, we actually become stronger. It seems counterintuitive, but it's true. When we're willing to be vulnerable, we're more likely to build strong, healthy relationships. We're more likely to take risks and achieve our goals. And we're more likely to live a life that is authentic and fulfilling. Vulnerability requires us to be honest with ourselves about who we are, what we want, and what we need. It requires us to let go of the need for control and to embrace the unknown. This can be scary, but it's also incredibly liberating. When we let go of the need to be perfect, we free ourselves to be our true selves. Section 7. Vulnerability in the workplace. Fostering collaboration and innovation. In today's fast-paced and ever-changing work environment, vulnerability is more important than ever. It's no longer enough to be smart and talented. We also need to be able to connect with others, build trust, and work effectively as a team. Vulnerability is essential for fostering a culture of collaboration and innovation. When team members feel safe to share their ideas, ask for help, and admit when they're struggling, everyone benefits. Leaders play a crucial role in creating this culture of vulnerability. They need to be willing to model vulnerability themselves, to create a safe space for others to do the same, and to reward vulnerability rather than punishing it. When vulnerability is embraced in the workplace, it can lead to increased creativity, productivity, and job satisfaction. Section 8. Overcoming the fear: practical steps to embrace vulnerability. Embracing vulnerability is a process, not a destination. It's about taking small, consistent steps outside of our comfort zones, and it's about being kind and compassionate with ourselves along the way. Here are a few practical tips for embracing vulnerability in your own life. First, start small. You don't have to bare your soul to the world all at once. Start by sharing something small with someone you trust. Second, be kind to yourself. It's okay to feel scared or uncomfortable when you're being vulnerable. Be patient with yourself and celebrate your progress. Third, challenge your negative self-talk. Shame loves to tell us that we're not good enough, but we don't have to listen. When you catch yourself thinking negative thoughts, challenge them with positive affirmations. Fourth, surround yourself with supportive people. Let go of relationships that make you feel judged or inadequate. Seek out people who love and accept you for who you are. Finally, practice gratitude. Focusing on the good in our lives can help us to feel more courageous and resilient. Take some time each day to appreciate the people and things you're grateful for. Section 9. The gift of imperfection: embracing our authentic selves. We live in a culture that values perfection. We're bombarded with images of airbrushed models, perfectly curated social media feeds, and seemingly effortless success stories. It's no wonder so many of us feel inadequate. But the truth is, perfection is an illusion. It's unattainable, and frankly, it's boring. What makes us interesting and lovable are our imperfections, our quirks, our unique stories. When we embrace our imperfections, we give ourselves permission to be human. We let go of the need to please everyone, and we start living a life that is true to ourselves. This doesn't mean we shouldn't strive to be our best selves. It just means we need to be kind and compassionate with ourselves along the way. We need to learn to love and accept ourselves, flaws and all. Section 10. Vulnerability and resilience: bouncing back from adversity. Life is full of challenges. We all experience setbacks, disappointments, and heartaches. It's inevitable, but it's not the challenges themselves that define us. It's how we choose to respond to them. Vulnerability is essential for building resilience. When we allow ourselves to feel our emotions fully, to grieve our losses, and to ask for help when we need it, we become stronger and more capable of navigating life's ups and downs. When we try to suppress our emotions or pretend that we're not struggling, we actually make it harder for ourselves to bounce back from adversity. We isolate ourselves from others, and we prevent ourselves from healing. Vulnerability allows us to connect with others, to receive support, and to heal from our wounds. It's the key to building a life that is both meaningful and resilient. Section 11. The transformative power of vulnerability: living a more courageous and fulfilling life. Vulnerability is not a weakness, it's our greatest strength. It's the key to living a more courageous, connected, and fulfilling life. When we embrace vulnerability, we open ourselves up to a world of possibilities. We build stronger relationships, we achieve our goals, and we live a life that is true to ourselves. It's not always easy, but it's always worth it. So go ahead, dare to be vulnerable. You might be surprised at what you discover.